All righty. Anybody remember what Ms. Grin stands for? Okay, I'm gonna show you in a minute. I'm gonna make y'all write it down. Bonus points to anybody who can beat me to the punch. And no takers. All right, keep my points to myself. All righty, Ms. Grin. All right, so I need y'all to write this down because you need to remember. You need to remember. You need to remember. What is Ms. Grin? And it's the acronym for remembering. And if you need to write that down to what it is, you need to write down that these are the life functions that all living things must do. The life functions that all living things must do. Ms. Grin. Now we have two R's. It doesn't matter which R goes where, as long as you remember uh, what they stand for. That's the important part. Remember what they stand for. So everybody should be writing this down. So the next time I ask you is going to be on a quiz. All right, the reason it's important to remember what these things are is we're about to do our study of cells. And cells, while they are microscopic in size, they are, when we get to it, the basic unit of structure for all living things, which means in order for the whole organism to function properly, the cell has to function. So the cell has to be able to do all of these things as well. So we're going to look at unicellular organisms as well as multicellular organisms, and we always have to keep in mind, how are they going to do these things? So we're going to look at the structures. So we tend to think of ourselves, so we know that we move, we can move our arms, we can shake our head, we can run all over the place. We inhale, exhale, and and you need to remember that breathing is a mechanical process for respiration. We breathe so that we can take in the oxygen and exhale the carbon dioxide for respiration. All right. We are sensitive to things. If something is coming at us, we blink or we skin, something, breeze goes by, we feel it on our skin, the hairs on our skin move. So we are sensitive. If something's hot, um, we jump back. We grow. You're not the same size as when you were born. Uh, you got here because of reproduction. All organisms need to get rid of waste as a result of taking in nutrition. Okay, so they're not necessarily in order, but they're in order of how to, for the acronym. Okay, because you obviously need to eat before you excrete. You need respiration in order to, is a process of nutrition and excretion. So they kind of all go together. All right. So hopefully everybody's written that down. You should have it somewhere back in the beginning of your notes, but now you have it again. All right. So I asked you to log into Let's see if it'll go. Might need to close that, huh? Okay, it stopped sharing. So I gotta share. Yeah, they've changed everything around. So now I have to get used to the new way the tech people have stuff. They remove the background. They, so I don't know what's up with that, but all right. So this is where everybody needs to be in Canvas. So again, we're going to talk about the cells. The first one, so they've got an acronym for that as well, is for compartments. E is for every organism's building blocks. L is for the life processes carried out within. And L, the second L is for little factories of proteins. So we'll start with the first one. When the first person who decided that these things should be called cells, his name was Robert Hooke. And what he was actually looking at was cork. You know, the cork that you have in the bottle is actually dead wood from a tree. And so when he looked at it under the cell, and then again, we have to remember that it's because it's wood, it's a plant. So he was looking at plant cells that were empty. And to him, they looked like prison cells or a room. So that's why he named them cells. But they were empty. Now we know that there's lots of things inside. When a cell is living, it's got lots of things inside. And we have something called the cell theory, and which explains that it is understood that all living things are made up of cells. Okay, they are all responsible to carry out all the life functions. So we're going to talk about breathing and digestion and reproduction all within the cell. What parts of the cell carry on these things? Now, we just finished talking about macromolecules. So we're going to take those macromolecules and we're going to apply them now to the cell. Where we said the macromolecule nucleic acid is responsible for making protein. So we're going to look at in the little protein factory inside the cell, what it's called and how it makes the proteins. We're going to look at respiration in the cell, what organelle does it, and how it carries out, makes energy. So we talked about the carbohydrates give you energy. We're going to take that carbohydrate, we're going to put it in the cell and see how we get that energy. All right, so we're going to take, so again, we're going to take the information from the last unit and apply it to this unit. Okay, this little video, I keep trying to do the wrong page. This little video is not telling you much. She's just introducing yourself and welcoming you to studying cells. Okay. Um, all cells have a cell membrane on the outside. So they are contained within a membrane. Sometimes it's called a plasma membrane because the contents in the fluid or jelly inside is called plasma or cytoplasm. They all have DNA and they all have ribosomes. So we're going to talk about the DNA is where the nucleic acids are found, and the ribosomes are where the proteins are made. So that they all have these. Now, all cells don't have everything, but they all can do this. Okay. All right, so we're going to stop here. And before we do that, we're going to watch a little film. I love the Amoeba Sisters.
If you had to think back about the most exciting day you ever had in a science classroom, which day would that be? Now, looking back through the years, we have a few. The time we participated in an earthworm dissection, the time we took apart an owl pellet, the osmosis eggs, all of the fruit flies and genetic experiments. But I will never forget one day in my 9th grade science class. My teacher brought in pond water. And I put one drop of pond water on a microscope slide and saw the most amazing thing ever. I saw an amoeba. A single-celled amoeba on that microscope slide, and I was forever stuck on science from that point on. Because I could not believe that this little cell was there, alive on this slide, still eating, because that's what amoebas do a lot. But to imagine that every person is actually made of billions of cells. Of course, not amoeba cells, but animal cells. Billions of animal cells. That's fascinating. In fact, it really makes you reflect on some of the incredible statements of the modern cell theory. The modern cell theory includes the following. First, that the cell is the smallest living unit in all organisms. And second, that all living things are made of cells, one or more cells. The amoeba I observed was a single-celled organism, so unicellular. Humans are made of many cells, so multicellular. And third, all cells come from other pre-existing cells. You know, cells have their own little world inside them. They carry genetic information, they can divide, many have functions and processes that their organelles, structures inside them, can take care of. On our planet, we can divide cells into two major groups. As a cell, you're either a prokaryote or a eukaryote. Bacteria and archaea are prokaryotes, but everything else, plants, animals, fungi, protists, are eukaryotes. Both prokaryotes and eukaryotes have genetic material. Both have cytoplasm. Both have ribosomes, which are small organelles that make protein. Both have cell membranes, which control what goes in and out of the cell. But what makes them different is a big deal. Prokaryote, the pro rhymes with no, and they have no nucleus, which holds the genetic material and controls the cell's activities. Prokaryotes have no membrane-bound organelles. Membrane-bound organelles are fancy organelles like the nucleus and mitochondria and Golgi apparatus. Eukaryotes, the U rhymes with do. They do have membrane-bound organelles. So now you may be wondering, well, what do the organelles do? What are their functions? Well, you know our style. We love our science with a side of comics. So we want to take you on a tour of the ride of your life, into the inside of a cell. Now, to start our trip, we're going to have to get through this cell membrane, also called a plasma membrane. It's selectively permeable, which means that it'll only let certain select materials in and out. But by doing so, it keeps things in the cell stable, also known as keeping homeostasis. And we have an entire video on just the membrane itself, which is found in all cells. But for now, we're just going to have to squeeze through this protein in the membrane. Now, inside the cell, we find ourselves in this jelly-like material called cytoplasm. It surrounds all these internal cell structures, and you'll find it inside both prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Now, organelles that are floating around in the cytoplasm can have more support than you might think. Cells contain a cytoskeleton, which is a collection of fibers that can provide support for the cell and its organelles. And the cytoskeleton can even play a major role in cell movement. The cytoskeleton actually deserves its own video because it's very complex and its organization can vary depending on what kind of cell you're looking at. Moving through the cytoplasm, let's start with ribosomes. They are not membrane-bound organelles, and they're going to be in both prokaryotes and eukaryotes. They make protein, which is really important because that's what so much of genetic material, DNA, codes for, protein. Ribosomes can be free in the cytoplasm, but they can be attached to another organelle too, which we'll talk about a little bit later. We're now going to focus on organelles that will be membrane-bound. So we're going to be focusing on organelles that you would find in a eukaryote cell. This takes our travel to the big boss, the nucleus. Now in eukaryotes, it holds the genetic material. Genetic material as in DNA, for example. Both prokaryotes and eukaryotes have DNA, but if you're a eukaryote, you have a nucleus to put it in. And the nucleus controls the cell's activities, and inside it, it has a nucleolus, which is where ribosomes can be produced. Attached to the membrane of the nucleus, or nuclear membrane, you will find the endoplasmic reticulum, ER for short. It does a lot of processing of molecules for the cell, like protein folding, and it's highly involved in actually transporting those molecules around, like a highway. There's a rough ER, which has ribosomes attached to it, making it, as you can imagine, rough. And then smooth ER, which doesn't have the ribosomes. Rough ER specifically tends to be involved with protein producing and transporting because remember that ribosomes make protein. Now, molecules that leave the ER can be sent away in vesicles that actually pinch off the ER themselves. Now, smooth ER has many additional roles, including detoxification, which is one reason why your liver cells tend to have a lot of smooth ER. And another additional role of smooth ER is that it can make some types of lipids. Next, the Golgi apparatus. It's the ultimate packaging center. It can receive items from the transport vesicles that pinched off the ER. It has enzymes that can modify molecules it may receive and sorts the material it receives as well. It can determine where to send those molecules, including some that may eventually be sent to the membrane, so they can be secreted, which means items that can be sent out of the cell. So with all that's going on in here, you might start to wonder, what's powering this thing? The mighty mitochondria, or mitochondrion, if you're just talking about one. They're like power plants. The mitochondria make ATP energy in a process called cellular respiration. Now, it's not the type of power plant that you might think of. It runs on glucose, which is a sugar, and it needs the presence of oxygen to efficiently make ATP energy. Now, at this point, we need to mention that eukaryotes are not a one-size-fits-all. Animal cells can have differences from plant cells. We have a fork in the road here. For example, plant cells not only have mitochondria, but they can also have these awesome organelles called chloroplasts. Chloroplasts actually make glucose by using light energy in a process known as photosynthesis. They tend to even have a green look to them because they have a pigment that captures the light energy and it reflects green light. Now, both plant and animal cells can have vacuoles. Now, vacuoles can have a lot of different functions, but many types act as storage of materials. Plant cells can have one large vacuole called a central vacuole, while animal cells can have smaller several vacuoles. Now, remember how we already said that all cells have membranes? They do. But plant cells additionally can have a cell wall, which is a layer that offers additional protection and shape maintenance that animal cells do not. Okay, now how do we get out of this animal cell that we've been in? Well, we could get out like a protein would. So if we were a protein, we would only be made because of instructions from DNA. And remember that in eukaryotes, DNA is found in the nucleus. We would be made by a ribosome because ribosomes make protein. The ribosomes could be attached to the rough ER, and the rough ER highway would provide a vesicle to send us to the Golgi apparatus where sorting can take place. And if we're tagged for being secreted, we could be sent off through a vesicle from the Golgi to the membrane. Out we go! Now just keep in mind that in our quick tour, there are still so many more awesome organelles found in lots of different types of eukaryote cells to continue exploring, so to the Google for more. Well, that's it for the Amoeba Sisters, and we remind you to stay curious.
All right, I want you to take a few minutes to read through this section. I'm going to do the attendance and I'll be right back. But I need you to read through this. What she just talked about in the video talked about these three words: eukaryotes, prokaryotes, and multicellular. So go ahead and try to put those things in place. We'll watch that one together, and then we're going to move on to one. Just move on, and that's what we're going to look at with this unit. See something. There was. Kind of skip the overview. So go back a slide. So go back a slide before you do this. And because I want you to see the abundance of vocabulary words that we have to cover. I do want to go through this stages of life with you before we go on. So take a look at this page and then go back and read the next page. So start the unit here. Cells are cool. And then just again, take a look at all of these vocabulary words that we have to do. So I'm going to, again, stop sharing, do attendance, and I'll be right back. You should be reading. You should be reading. It's a good time for a restroom break if you need one. Be reading. And that video is in your playlist. If you need to watch it again at some point. Today's Tuesday. Folks who are idle, been idle, so that means you didn't watch the movie at all. That's okay. Again, cells are complicated, so you're going to want to pay attention. So later on at your own leisure, you can watch. I got 3 people who've been idle for like 20 minutes. All right. Everybody should be reading. So I should be looking at everybody in Canvas, not looking at me. In Canvas, reading. Start with the first page. Introduction to cells. Folks, macromolecule was a walk in the park compared to this unit, so you want to start paying attention, keeping notes. I just asked, well, what was Miss Grin? And everybody's like, I don't have a clue. But you can't keep doing that. Again, remember that this is an end of year test. Sorry. This is an end of year test. This is an end of year test. Everybody should be in Canvas reading the introduction while I do attendance. I shouldn't be looking at me when I'm in GoGuardian and I'm looking at people looking at me. And I need to be looking at you, looking at the unit for cell introduction to cells. Look at all those vocabulary words. You should be reading, going through that first block in underneath the picture. Reading, everybody reading. All right, we're not up to cell membrane yet. Somebody's ahead of the game. That's cool. That's cool. Better than being behind. Yeah. Nice thing about a small class, doesn't take long to do attendance, especially when everybody shows up. All right, so I said we're going to go back a little. So starting back a little, we're first going to introduce what is a cell, talk about the cell theory, and then we're going to look at the fact that the Organization of Living Things says that all living things are made of cells, and cells get together and in groups and they form tissues, and then tissues get together in groups and they form organs, and organs get together in groups and form organ systems. Organ systems get together and form an organism. So our whole organism, it starts off by knowing what a cell is doing. Um, Dying from natural death means that one by one, some of your cells stop working, and if they stop working in a major organ and start non-functioning, then the organism dies. So if the whole, so we have illnesses and things when the cells, cancer is caused because cells have gone growing out of whack. They're growing where they shouldn't be growing. They're growing exponentially and causing problems. So it's all about the cell. What is this? If the cell functions properly, you function properly. All right, so we're going to look at the structure of the cell membrane. We're going to get that far today, looking at the structure of the membrane. We need to remember that cells are microscopic. So while we're going to be looking at these lovely big pictures. Cells actually cannot be seen with the naked eye. And so we're going to do an activity using the microscope and putting slides under a microscope, even virtually, and look at some things look at the structure of cells under a microscope. Tomorrow, you're actually going to do an activity where you're going to look at the parts of the cell and complete a worksheet for me. All righty, so again, look at all of these terms that we have, and we're going to go through every single one of them. All right, so we start off with the first one. The cell is the basic unit of life. And that takes us to cell theory. So what is believed about cells is this. It has three parts to it, that all living things are made up of one or more cells, which means, like I said in the video, you can be unicellular or multicellular. New cells come from old cells. In other words, cells don't just fall out of the sky. They're not bubbled up in a sea of goo. One cell has to make another cell, and that's how we grow. And thirdly, cells are the basic unit of structure and function for living things. So again, like I was saying, if your organs function properly, and then they have tiny organs, we call them organelles. So if the organelles function properly, the cell will function properly. If the cell is functioning properly, the organism is functioning properly. Okay, so that's why we have the vocabulary word organelles, and then all the rest of these are parts of the cell, and we'll cover those as we get to them. Okay, so there's a lot of parts to the cell, and again, we're going to look at them under the microscope, and there are different kinds of microscopes depending on what it is the view that you're trying to get of the cell. There then we're going to look, these words down here to the bottom have a lot to do with the behavior. Starting from we're going to talk about selectively permeable membrane today, but the rest of everything underneath that has to do with the behavior of the cell, what the cell will do. We've talked about the fact that water was one of our macromolecules, is a solvent, and we called it the universal solvent. And almost everything dissolves in water, but water is an important part of the cell. So things are going to dissolve inside the cell. The cell's going to behave a certain way. So we're going to talk about all these words. Okay. All right. So back to our second page, our little acronym. And I was watching, some of you weren't doing it. All right, so again, they're microscopic. All right, surface area. Surface area has a lot to do with how much stuff is going to actually pass through the cell membrane. When we talk about a cell membrane, it said it's a boundary around the cell. Think of it as like the screen on your window. And if you were to throw a bucket of water, of dirty water, at your screen, the water might go through, but some of the dirt and things in the bucket might stay on the outside because it's a boundary. It keeps some things out and lets some things in. So that's what the cell membrane does. It decides what it wants inside and decides what it's going to keep outside. All right, so the video talked about single-celled organisms. So there are organisms like amoeba and that are only one cell big, and that's the whole organism is one cell big. Then we have things like us and plants that are multicellular, and they get to move around. All right, you do need to know these words. Now, in the video, they did break those down into the fact that prokaryotes, they have the things that we need, but they're not inside a casing. So we call them membrane-bound organelles have a casing around the structures. So prokaryotes have DNA, they just don't have, they're just floating around inside the cytoplasm. They have ribosomes, or again, they're just floating around inside. There are no membrane-bound structures inside prokaryotes. Eukaryotes are the type of cells that we have. They have a definite nucleus, and in that nucleus, that's where you're going to find the DNA. DNA never leaves the nucleus. It's always, always in the nucleus. So we're going to look at that in more detail as well. All right, this video just basically shows you, gets you to understand the term differentiation.
All vertebrates start the same way, as one fertilized egg cell. The egg will divide and form new cells. And these divide to form more cells over and over. At first, an embryo's development seems chaotic. It soon begins taking on exquisite order. Fields of cells fold and slide over each other. These cells are gathering in a long line and rolling into a tube. This is the beginning of a spinal cord. Cell differentiation has taken place. Other cells are becoming heart cells and are forming a primitive beating heart. Each cell is ordered by a genetic program to form organs, limbs, tissue, to construct a body plan. At these early stages of embryonic development, it's hard to tell whether this is a chick, a frog, or a human being. Here, bumps on the limb develop into feathers, and as the chick outgrows its space and food supply, it is time to hatch.
All right, so basically what they wanted you to understand there is that if it's going to be a multicellular organism, it still starts with one cell, and the cell eventually, the DNA eventually will give it instructions. Okay, you group of cells, you're going to be the spinal cord. This group of cells, you're going to be the bones. You're going to be the brain cells. So they differentiate into different types of cells. All righty. Hopefully, again, you practice this. It's going to be a quiz one. So Miss Grant, and this part right here is going to be a quiz. So make sure that you know that. So in a cell that lacks a nucleus, we just talked about, if it doesn't have a nucleus, it's a prokaryote. If it has a nucleus, then it's a eukaryote. And then organisms that are made up of more than one cell. I don't know why mine never stays in this space, but it goes in that last space. Multicellular organisms are made up of more than one cell. All right, so know when someone asks you, what is the cell theory? And I will ask you, what is the cell theory? It's all things are composed of at least one cell, maybe more. All cells come from pre-existing cells. That's where you might see it. All cells come from pre-existing cells. And it is the basic unit of structure and function. Again, if the cell is not functioning right, the organism is not functioning right. So that's what makes that statement different than the first one. Okay? All right. So now, as they called it, the cell membrane. Now, we kind of talked about it a little bit when we were looking at lipids, because the cell membrane is made up of as a lipid bilayer. So we're going to see that talked about here.
One of the most important and complex structures of the cell is its outer boundary, known as the cell or plasma membrane. The cell membrane serves two main functions. It protects the internal parts of the cell, and it regulates which substances enter and exit. The cell membrane is selectively permeable, restricting the flow of traffic into and out of the cell to specific molecules. It, in essence, acts as a gatekeeper. The cell membrane consists of phospholipid molecules and proteins. A closer look at a phospholipid molecule reveals that it is composed of a hydrophilic or water-seeking head and a hydrophobic or water-repelling tail. The phospholipid molecules that make up the cell membrane are in constant motion. Proteins that help make up the cell membrane perform several important tasks, including transporting molecules into and out of the cell. Some proteins act as small pumps, actively transporting molecules from one side of the membrane to the other.
Okay. So let me come back to that for a minute. So when we were looking at our macromolecules, we looked at the structure of a fatty acid, and it had this molecule that had the hydrophobic and hydrophilic ends to it, but then there's two layers of them. So this is what we call a phosphobilipid layer. So they help maintain the things that are going to go in and out of the cell. But if there's things that are too large that can't just flow through, yes, they do let viruses in. And this is the thing here, because the viruses are tricky. They disguise themselves so that they look like something that can get in. This big structure here in the middle, things that just don't flow through, they can get through if the cell allows it, through these what we call protein molecules, and they also act like little gatekeepers because they open and close and allow larger molecules to get in. But like I said, viruses, they mutate, they disguise. And when we talk about viruses later, we're going to talk about why, how they have DNA in them also. So they can disguise themselves to look like something that's familiar to us, because they have to get inside the cell in order to reproduce. They can't reproduce by themselves. Okay. All right. Thank you, Raymond. That was a good point. All righty. So again, recognize, sometimes it depends on what book you're reading. We'll call it a plasma membrane. Some will call it a cell membrane. Same thing. It is the boundary of the cell. Okay. All righty. I think we've already looked at this, but let's see what it is. All right, so this is the word I want you to become familiar with: selectively permeable. Go back just a little bit to the actual word. Come on. There we go. It is selectively permeable. Permeable means things that can pass through. Selectively permeable means that it selects what it wants to pass through and it keeps other things out. So this is a vocabulary word that you need to make sure you have under your belt. Fluid mosaic model. And again, this video doesn't talk. It just means that as you saw in the other video, the little lipid molecules, they kind of move back and forth. So that gives the membrane a kind of a fluid behavior to it. And mosaic in that it has different structures in it. So we're going to look at, so this is a fluid mosaic model of a cell membrane. As you can see, it's got, so when you think of mosaic, you think of things sticking out all over the place, not uniform. So they randomly have big protein molecules sticking out of them, and in addition to the lipid bilipid layer, okay, and other carbohydrate structures in them as well. All right, so you've got all these words up here. So you're going to have to do this as a quiz one day. Now you can look at that and cheat, and it'll show you the answers. Actually, it downloads the answers, but you, rather than download the answers, I have the answers for you over here. So what I would like for you to do, just hit the next button and it'll take you to the labeled cell membrane. All right, study that for a little while and then go back and see, test yourself. Then see if you can, okay, come on. Okay, up here. So see if you can't drag things into place where they belong. Oh, you have to put it where, okay, so that's gonna need to go like that. Come on. Anyway, you're supposed to, it should stay. Okay. But anyway, test yourself and drag, see if yours stays. Mine, and then you want to do this. All right, so for the next 10 minutes, I want you to be practicing on this membrane and then come back and do the challenge. And again, I already have the membrane labeled for you. So take a look at that. Yeah, I put it there and it didn't want to stay. So if your dragging doesn't work like mine didn't work, study this because you will have a quiz where you will have to label the parts. You will have to know that these big blue things are protein channels. You will have to know what the protein channels do. So you have some that are just extend through the whole thing. You have some that are just lying on the surface proteins. So all the little blue things, globular proteins, are, then you have the dark blue ones, which are carbohydrates. We all know what a carbohydrate is, don't we? All right, so study that for a minute, next few minutes, and then go back and answer this. All right, so I'm going to check, see if you're doing it. Some of y'all definitely doing other things. So everybody should be studying the pre-labeled cell membrane and then go back and see if you can remember like a matching thing. Can you remember where everything goes? And then do the quiz. All right, so do that for the next few minutes, and I'm going to show you what we're going to do tomorrow. If you click on answer, it's only going to give you a sheet to download, which doesn't help a whole lot to me, which is why I put the picture on the following slide. Because the answer key doesn't help a whole lot. All right, so test yourself. Look at the label diagram, study where everything is, and then see if you can't drag the words into place where they should go. Oh, now it wants to stay. And it won't stay where if it's the wrong answer.
Wait, so when I label the thingy, am I supposed to put it in that discussion? Or is it just
I'm sorry, ask that question again.
when I are we supposed to be labeling the thing? The cell thing right there, that?
Uh-huh. Excuse me.
Okay. Are we supposed to like take a screenshot of it and then like submit it?
Bless
No,
you.
no, you don't have to do that. Thank you.
Okay.
Not yet. I'm thinking of doing this screenshot on the matching box, but no. Right now you're just dragging, and you'll know if it's okay. There's where my excuse me. I tickle in my throat. And you'll know if it stays, if it's the right thing, because it'll stay. It won't stay if it's wrong. And I'm missing a line somewhere. Oh, here. Okay, that goes there. And where's another line? Oh, there. Okay. So yeah, you were just supposed to just drag all the words into place so that you can practice, knowing where these things are. We are actually going to look at how the cell membrane behaves. So kind of understanding what these things are doing is helpful. Okay, so now you're not submitting anything today. The submitting part comes tomorrow. All right, so another name for the cell membrane is the plasma membrane. Lets some things in and out of the cell, but not everything. All right, the bilipid layer with proteins embedded in it. The phosphate head with two fatty acid tails. The cell membrane is made up of these. And the outer boundary of the cell protects the cell and keeps everything inside. Okay. All right. So again, always look at the know before you go. So that basically that's everything we just did in this little matching box. All right, and so we looked at that to make sure that you study that. And again, this is the fluid mosaic model. In other words, most of the time when we look at a picture of the cell, we look at it a little thin line that goes around and everything is inside. It doesn't actually look like that. If we put it under a microscope, it actually has two layers to it, and it has things that are embedded in the membrane. So that's what it really looks like. Not necessarily all colorful like that, but they color coded that so that you will be able to distinguish one structure from another. All right, so what we're going to do tomorrow, we're going to go to this website and we're actually going to look at cells. And we're going to start with the animal cell. And as you look at these, so you're going to get in the, let's see, I think it's on your to-do list. I'll find it in just a minute. You're going to look at these. So as, for example, if you click on nucleus, it's going to tell you what the nucleus does, and you're going to find it on your worksheet. So let's go back and do that. Okay, let's see if it's in your module or out. Yep, there it is. So you click on the next one. So I put that link right here as well. But the first one you want, so you want to download these two worksheets. I mean, as tomorrow's a short class. If you want to get started now, you can. So you are going to label all the parts of the cell, and on the line underneath, so download it in such a way that you can write on it. The lines underneath are for you to give a brief description of what that structure does. So for example, number one, let's go to the interactive. And there's two ways you can do this. Let me come back here. All right. So what you can do is click on the picture. Okay. So number one on your worksheet. So again, I'm going to go back to the worksheet right here. This is what you're downloading. It says number one. So let's go to the picture and the interactive. Number one looks like that. So I'm going to click on that. And it tells me that number one is a lysosome. and you want to summarize it. It has enzymes necessary for digestion. And that's all. You don't have to write everything you see, just basically what is its main function. Think of the life functions that we do and figure out what is the main life function for this organelle. So you want to write lysosomes, and it contains the enzymes necessary for digestion. And that's all you need to put on that line. Okay. All right. Next one. And I'm going to start the first two for you. This next one is pointing to the outside. So we all know what that is. The outside. So we go back to the picture. So just click back on animal cell. And if you, yeah, it's going to be this right there. Your arrow is different on your worksheet, but that's what it is. Okay. And again, we know what this is. This is the cell membrane, so we can call it the barrier. We don't have to describe it the way it is you can call it a phospholipid barrier for the cell. What's another includes? All right, this has a lot of description. Give me a short description of what a cell membrane is. And again, we just talked about what the cell membrane is. It is a boundary for the cell, the gatekeeper for the cell, and it's made of phospholipids. That's all you need to say for that one. Okay. All right. So I'm going to give you a minute to go ahead and download these worksheets. So these are in the module. Everybody should be able to find these in the module. All right. So you have one for the animal cell and you have one for the plant cell. So this is why you need to go ahead and get started now, because the plant cell is a whole other worksheet. So on the website, which I just closed, for the plant cell, you want to click on plant cell and you want to do the same thing with that. So if you go like this to the picture, it'll tell you what those things are. And then you can write a brief description of what that is. So this is a chloroplast. So there's a first thing you want to write is what is it called? And then you want to give a brief description of what it does. And you don't have to tell me they're in plants because we already know this is a plant cell, but they contain the chlorophyll, which is responsible for green color and the ability to absorb light energy. That's all you need to say for chlorophyll. Read the rest. Always read the rest, but you don't have to write all of that. Okay? All right. So I'm going to stop talking. We only have a few minutes left to class today, but you can get started by downloading the worksheet, making sure you have it in a format that you can write on. And then if you have a minute, you can go ahead and click on it's locked. What's locked? Cells Alive is locked. That's locked. Let me see if I can. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Allowed. All right, try it now. All right, somebody try Cells Alive now. Because if not, I have to let them know. The worksheets are locked. You know why the worksheets might be locked? Well, test it because I might have just put it down for tomorrow's activity. So let me look at that. it's not going to open until tomorrow. Haha. And yo, that's why you can't get to them. Because this was actually, I had set this up for tomorrow's activity. So let me just make it available today. Alrighty. All right, refresh your page and it should be available now. I changed the date, so it's available today. Thank you, Brooklyn. All right, so everybody should be trying to see if they can, one, download the worksheets, and two, let me know if you cannot get into. All right, I see somebody's in Cells Alive, so that's good. I don't have to get them to do that. But yes, try to download the worksheets. They should be available now. Download them so that you can write on them. And at least get yourself set up so that when you come in tomorrow, because tomorrow again is the short class. So you save yourself some time. Or is there anybody who's not able to download the worksheet? Everybody can access the worksheet. And download them so that you can write on them. All right, so these are the two worksheets that you will have to upload. So again, please make sure that you can not only download them, but download them so that you can write on them as a PDF, if Cami, if you have to. All right, if everybody is good, you have no questions, then we're good to log out today, and we'll see you tomorrow.